is something that has been established. We also have Mr. S.V. Raju, who is joining us, somebody who's been very instrumental to these proceedings, somebody who's argued for the Delhi police. Sir, welcome to CNN News 18. My first question to you is,
Thank you.
what is the Supreme Court's order? What is the kind of reaction that is there from you, first of all?
Say the reaction is that justice has been done as far as these two persons are concerned, Sharjeel Imam and Umar Khalid. The social media tried to portray the case in a different manner. And without going into the evidence, without going into the material, people made comments, and which was totally unjustifiable. You cannot justify. Some lawmakers from US also said grant them bail. How can US lawmakers say grant them bail? Are they aware of our Indian conditions? Are they aware of the contents of the charge sheet? Merely because they have maybe have a different standard in the US? Are they aware of the provisions of law as far as India is concerned? In fact, if anybody would have said this in India, they would have been hauled for contempt. Because you can't tell the court grant them bail. Somebody will say don't grant them bail. You can't interfere with the administration of justice. But the court has to deal matters in accordance with law, meaning thereby it has to go as per the evidence on record and as per the law. Umar Khalid's earlier bail application was withdrawn. Therefore, prima facie case was established earlier also. So the judgment is a correct judgment. It is a very
Mr.
well
Raju,
reasoned, very well articulated judgment.
Mr. Raju, people like by the likes of New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani, 8 lawmakers, like you were mentioning, actually came up. Was this a pressure tactic in order to, somewhere or the other influence the judges, or to put out an impression in your opinion? Because you've seen law from a very, you've been at the Supreme Court for way long years. It's almost 4 decades, 3 to 4 decades that you have given to the topmost court of the country. You're additional Solicitor General, senior advocate from the Gujarat High Court as well. So, was it a pressure tactic somewhere or the other? Have you seen this for the first time, or is it something that happens usually?
Where important anti-national elements are involved and where they feel that the case is going against them, not because of anything else, but because they don't have a strong case, these type of tactics are resorted to. To my recollection, even in the Augusta Westland case, the foreigner who was arrested, Michael, what is his name? I forget. He there also the British High Commission wrote a letter. How can this be done? How can you tell the courts to pass a particular type of order? This is contempt on the face of it. And you may give an opinion that is a case warrants granting of bail, but can you do that without reading 2,500 pages of the charge sheet? Can you do that without looking at the evidence of statements of witnesses? Can you do that without looking at what the Indian law is? The Indian law of bail is different from the American law of bail. You can't bodily live those principles and say granting bail. Totally unwarranted. The order is well reasoned, well articulated, erudite judgment, and it understands the problems that India is facing, the terrorist activities which are going on. There are many terrorists who like to remain in the background, but they're pulling the strings, and they are the real culprits. So the judgment takes, I've not read the judgment because I'm not in Delhi, I've not had a copy of it, but whatever was read out in the court, it was very well balanced and very well articulated, very well reasoned, and has taken into consideration the legal aspects and the factual aspects of the case.
Mr. Raju, before I let you go, my last and final question to you is that the argument that's been put forth by you, somewhere or the other, it has worked out. What was the prime argument, and why has the court actually segregated Umar Khalid and the likes of Sharjeel Imam for others? And what was your prime argument as far as denial of bail to these particular persons is concerned?
See, probably the court felt that the case of these two persons are different. They are the masterminds. Their role is different. You can't compare the role with the role of the others. So maybe because their role was a little peripheral, the court might have granted it. But I'll have to examine the judgment and tell you this. But my argument with respect to these two persons was they are the main. Yes. So court has mainly gone on the role.
One thing that I would want to One thing I would like to ask you is that I remember that when you were arguing this particular case, it was in fact the third or fourth day of that particular hearing when you were advancing your submissions. You had said something with regards to how intellectual terrorists are much more dangerous. If you could elaborate more on that.
I'll tell you what I meant. See, there are persons who are sitting, who are behind the scenes, and they are pulling the strings. And the foot soldiers do the execution part. I'm not saying that foot soldiers are not dangerous persons. They are the persons who carry out the orders of execution given by their masters. Say, for example, the ISI people in Pakistan, they will ask a particular person to carry out bombing in India. If that person doesn't do it, they'll get somebody else. Therefore, that continuity remains. So it is those persons that we have to strike at. And these are the intellectuals who are masterminding everything, who are planning everything, who are telling what to do to the foot soldiers. Therefore, they are more dangerous. That is what I meant.
So, thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Raju. This was SV Raju, who had led the prosecution, somebody who has been very instrumental to the 2020 Delhi riots case, along with Mr. Amit Prasad, who had in fact led the prosecution in the trial court and the high court stage. Very clearly, Mr. Raju had been arguing since the very beginning that this was a regime change operation that was being operated by, in fact, the Delhi police, in fact, these accused persons, so as to strike terror in the mind of people. It was the Donald Trump's visit when all of these instances were planned and were executed in the garb of peaceful protests. Sir, you were saying something. I'm so sorry, Mr. Raju.
I would be failing in my duty if I hog the limelight. My special thanks to Mr. Kushwa, Delhi Police and his team, who were relentlessly helping me in the matter. Mr. Rajat Nair, Mr. Amit Prasad, Mr. Annam Venkatesh, my team of lawyers, Itat, Raja, Samrat, and all those persons. It's a collective effort. It is not my effort. But for their support and but for the guidance, I would not have argued the matter in which I've argued. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. In fact, it is in fact a laudable thing, because I have seen Mr. Raju and the whole team, Mr. Rajat Nair, Amit Prasad, and in fact Anam Venkatesh or Akan Pratap Singh, who had been very, very instrumental to the 2020 Delhi riots case, because they had built this whole case on paper. It was in fact a charge sheet that was filed and was drafted by Mr. Kushwaha's team, the DCP special cell at that particular point of time, and somebody who had investigated it in fact with such cleanliness that there were drone footages captured of every place of instance in order to recreate that particular crime scene, to see as to what had actually conspired and what has actually transpired on those days. So very clearly, these were the people behind the successful prosecution and in fact this denial of bail to Umar, Khalid and Sharjeel Imam somewhere or the other, because they had led that case. They had compiled a billion pages of a billion megabytes of these documents, and in fact humongous pages of charge sheet and electronic evidence was actually calibrated and was actually compiled by this big team of Delhi Police's lawyers. In fact, it was earlier only led by Mr. Amit Prasad and Mr. Raju, but there were more and more additions taken, seeing the seriousness of this case and the humongous paperwork that was actually required in this particular case. But coming back to the verdict that has been passed by the topmost court of the country, the Supreme Court is very, very clear.